Come up with a term for this piece, I could not, but it looks like somewhat of a side cap, so I'm going to call it the side cap. And I've been working today to fabricate this piece here that goes along the so-called side cap to match the one on my original, which is still good on the other side, thankfully. So it just has octagonal flutes on the side. Now I've got to start working down these paddle bit holes and to attach the hardware. Okay, so now I've got it in place. I've drilled 3 holes in it, got the first 3 screws or 3 bolts. Now I'm going to try to flip it over and drill out the holes for the ribs right there. Now that those 4 holes are drilled, I can just slip the bolt through there and use that as a template to trace off the sides of that, and then start inletting it with chisel and mallet. Next, we have what I call the back header, and my original header piece, this piece here, that's angled and kind of beveled, that piece is still good. There's nothing wrong with it, so I'm not going to replace it, but I have bought a new piece for this upper bow, which not only needs replacing, but it also needs some fitting. So I'll be working on that today, but first I need to derust and OSFO that and pull those old tacks out along the way and get ready for the new ones, hopefully. Now for the other header piece for the rear header, I had to buy that piece, and I ended up having to use my Hitachi side grinder with a sanding disc on it to bevel this edge here so that it would fit better. So I still had to alter it. I believe I could have made this piece, but now that I've got it in hand, I may as well use it. So that piece goes up here, like that, and like that. And it took a little back and forth to get it, but I think that'll work. And well, let's see if we can get the holes to drill. Here's what that piece looks like from the inside there. And the holes that are already pre-drilled in it are kind of cocked at an angle, so I've worked really hard to get this piece to fit down in my slot, and it looks like I would have to kind of cock it more at an angle like that to get the holes to line up better, and that might do better as far as the profile of the top's concerned. After much trial and error, I was able to get the angle on the back of this and the angle on the front of that to pitch up enough to meet the already existing holes in this back header. So I did widen these out a little bit with a larger drill bit, and finding the hardware to get into that is difficult. But anyway, now I have holes that fit where they're supposed to. Now I want to paint this thing black and put some anti-friction tape on. I was able to finally get it in, and there's a little bit of a lip right here. Otherwise, it does have a nice uphill slope that matches with the profile of that other rib up there. Now the back header is painted, and before I install, I need to put some anti-friction tape where the surfaces will be rubbing. Yes, added a little friction tape along this area here. Had to put a little wood glue on it, or just glue, so it don't come off, because that adhesive on the friction tape is very weak. So I had to beef it up a bit, and I put a little bit on the back of the header piece there. So when that dries, I'll be ready to install that. Okay, so next it's time to sand and paint the little caps that go over top of both driver and passenger side doors. As you can see, they need a little help. All right, now that we've got the friction tape and it's glued and dried a day or so, I can go ahead and start trying to put this rear header piece in, like so, like that, and then try to get those bolts to feed through a little bit at a time. That's how it looks. Part of the problem with some of these videos on YouTube, I know, is you can't see close up, so I try to get these close up so that you can see what it is you need to see. And these hardware kits that you get, I suppose these are the best place for those longest screws, longest bolts. So once you get one bolt kind of in place, the rest of them are a little bit easier to go in. Sometimes I take a hammer and just kind of tap from the back, but I actually oversize these holes a little bit to ensure success. So these in a corner here are the least fun, but there is a square headed mortise there, and then you got the carriage head bolt with the square head on it there to fit in there. And these go at an angle, and they have to be a certain length, and thankfully my old ones fit better than any new one, so I've just kind of cleaned them up and trying to get them back in that hole. So let the fun begin. Okay, so now you can see as the bolt comes through the piece of wood, it has to feed into this angle piece here through that hole, and then you have the fun of having to put the washers and the nut on the end. So that's what'll be next. Wow, praise the Lord, I got all of them on there. So now I just need to tighten it up and let the square mortise and the square shank on that carriage head bolt hold me still. I think this would be a good opportunity to show all the other pieces that need to be painted for replacing the top if yours is in bad a shape as mine is. This is what I call the header cap, nails to the face of the header there, and it also has the the mirror, rear view mirror. And on my car, this piece will need to be painted a separate color than this part, so I'll have to mask it off. But on the inside, as you can see, it had some type of an anti-squeak material, and it certainly needs to be de-rusted and hit with a phosphoric acid. This is one of my favorite tools I use. It's a foam pad that has Velcro on the back of it, and that Velcro pad allows you to exchange the different grits. And because it's a pad, it conforms to certain things, but it also has enough rigidity to get into corners and edges really good like that. So this is what I use to do a lot of my sanding work by hand. is this right here. I don't know what you call it. So now with my windshield, a couple observations. There is a rubber strip or gasket of some sort that runs along the top edge where the windshield wiper goes. I'm assuming that that must have went all the way around. And there are two screws, one here and one there. And if I flip the whole thing over, I notice, as Brentwood Bob says on his YouTube channel, that this end here has been abused right there, beaten up pretty bad. So I might need to work on that. Doesn't seem like I have a whole lot of flex in my windshield hinge. And then there is some gasket material along the inside here, but I don't see anything visible along the inside rim where the window touches the frame. Just on the outside where it touches the frame of the car, it comes shut. And then there are some screws right there. So I think I'm going to hit it all with penetrating oil real good and see if I can get some of this flexing again, and maybe open that up with a punch or something to try to see if we can get that moving. The inside of this windshield now, I'm going to take and try to remove all this old gasket material. Here we go. So to get this stuff out, what I'm doing is I've took a screwdriver on the side grinder, the bench grinder, ground it down to about 3/16 of an inch, and I'm just using the hammer behind it to kind of tap it out and break it apart. I'm starting to think that this gasket material is from the 1800s. Would that be possible? Boys and girls, guess what time it is now? It's time to paint up all these trim pieces for the Model A, the windshield, the header cap, and the two top side caps and the visor. So now we've just committed to a full day or two's worth of hard work. By looking at that header cap, you can see that it was needing to be repainted. As you might have already detected, the mirror on this piece here is from probably the 50s or 60s and is certainly aftermarket. So I'm going to punch it out, remove it, and replace it with a more period appropriate piece, hopefully an original. Okay, first coat of primer. Not too shabby. Now it's time for the great reveal over the masking. And there we have the two tones on the header cap. Thankfully this seam will be completely hidden by the windshield and the hinge on it. So there is the upper body color on the outside of the header cap, and then on the inside of the car is the lower body color. I think that turned out pretty good for amateur painters. I'm very pleased. Praise the Lord.